Welcome to Supply Chain Talks. My name is Kristian Kaas Mortensen. I'm a Senior Director, Global Partnership and Alliances at project44. And today, I'm also your host for Supply Chain Talks. Project44 has hand-curated a strong partner network in order to extend and enable the best possible customer experience. During spring and summer, we welcome you to our partner series, Supply Chain Talks. These conversations touch on current developments in global supply chains and the world of logistics. Today, we happily welcome Mr. Breen to Supply Chain Talks. Eric is the Vice President of Business Development at Kaleris. Eric, I'm super happy to have you join.
Kristian, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Eric, you're the first long-distance guest in Supply Chain Talks. The other participants were all based here in Europe. You, on the other hand, are 10 hours behind me and based in sunny California. When I started working with you, you were from Pink. Then earlier this year, the company joined Kaleris. Can you share more on this development?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, Pink was part of, or I should say, originally a yard management solution company in North America. Been around for a long time, 16, 17 years. And a lot of interest has been in yard management, we'll talk about in this interview, of course. And about a year ago, a private equity firm, Excel KKR, had some interest in us, and they bought us. So that was not the end of their thesis, we'll say. They bought a couple of rail companies, and all of a sudden we had multiple brands under one roof. And they said, we need to maybe change the name. So we changed the name to an umbrella company called Kaleris. And the effect of this, of course, is we have these other companies, of which is Pink is now a brand name of that. But what's nice about it is that we're now in warehouse yard, rail, and we're going to soon see us in ocean ports, potentially in intermodal and other modes of transportation in the supply chain.
Great. In your job, you work with shippers in both Europe and the US. Have you seen any differences or similarities between these two major markets?
Yes, actually both. Yeah, let's start with the differences first, Kristian. In North America, we tend to have a little more land, a little more space to spread out, right? So the warehouses here and the yards that support those, the parking lots, if you will, are much larger. And that's pretty much a tradition in North America, have large warehouses. And so from that perspective, the reason why, in supply chain, how you then work with that operation is what we call drop lots. So it's a pretty traditional or standard way of doing business of dropping containers or dropping trailers into this massive yard. And then the facility then has these trailers and containers brought to the warehouse or the factory as they need, right? So this is a very traditional way of doing business in North America. In contrast, in Europe, even though this does exist in Europe, there's this style, a little more traditional to have smaller facilities, smaller factories, sometimes city center, sometimes in a small area. There is no parking lot or a very small parking lot. So to support this, we see more live drivers. The driver comes in, they do their load, their unload, and they leave. There's no dropping taking place. Now, of course, live driver operations exist in North America, they exist in Europe, and drop lot, same thing. But this is a holistically a very different type of situation between the two locations. Now, similarities, I think we know the challenges of supply chain, right? The constraints, the gaps, these things exist definitely on both sides of the pond, whether they be port issues or driver issues, visibility issues. These things, they exist everywhere, right? Supply chain challenges exist across the entire globe. And that's very similar no matter where you are in the globe.
Eric, the pandemic is creating longer dwell times for carriers, more congested yards, and DC operation. It effectively exposed major interruption in today's supply chains and the workflows that they support. Yards many times remain notoriously inefficient. How do the best companies work with yard management, and what are the problems they want to solve?
Good question, Kristian. Well, if you think about it, in what project44 does, you give the visibility of where, let's take a truck, for example. Where is this truck? Where is this load on the open road? Where is it from point A to point B, right? And this is fantastic. But when the truck gets to the actual gate of a factory, for example, it goes into the yard, and all of a sudden the visibility is lost. What's happened to this? So there are sometimes, we've done some studies where the trailer container will actually sit in a yard, a parking lot, inside of a facility longer than it took to actually get to the facility, because they just don't have this visibility of where this trailer is. So let's kind of break it down into two answers for the question. The first is where is it? The visibility part. Now, granted, this is a bigger yard is going to have a bigger problem with this, right? Let's say a large yard with several hundred trailers parked. That operation has a problem. Where is my trailer, right? And it's not only where is my trailer, it's where is the inventory on the trailer. If you think about it, the yard is really an extension of the warehouse or the factory inventory. It just happens to be sitting on the actual trailer itself. So where is it? And of course, what's on it is very important. So in a large yard, large companies, the best companies in the world use yard management to know where things are at. And we have proprietary technologies to do that. The piece the second piece that covers all yards is the workflows, right? It is now moving that asset through the yard in a very efficient manner. Even it starts even at the gate check-in. Think about if the check-in automatic, is the data flowing automatically between systems, or is there a guard entering on a clipboard all the data manually, right? I mean, you think about it, it can be a very cumbersome process. And once it gets into the yard, how do you make that trailer flow through the sequences of all the steps it has to go through to unload that trailer, or if it's a shipper, to ship that trailer out? That sequencing, to automate that, is where the best companies are really striving to get to, right? And the visibility in that yard, as I mentioned, is also very, very important. I'll add one more thing too. Carrier performance. Project 44, big part of what you do, right? Visibility. How is the carrier performance doing? Well, think about this from a yard perspective. The carrier is still the carrier, right? The trailer is still owned by somebody else. Well, how's the performance of the carrier of picking up those trailers or acting within the yard? Best companies use yard management to actually do performance metrics on their carriers within the yard. Again, some really powerful metrics, KPIs that can be really garnished within the yard with a good system.
Yep, I agree with
Yeah.
everything. Building on that, Eric, by now, most companies definitely understand that linking real-time visibility data with their transportation management system creates value. How about linking real-time visibility with the yard management?
Well, we kind of touched on that a minute ago, right? We're trying to take this asset on the open road, point A to point B. You have the visibility, right? And when you get to the gate, it shouldn't stop, right? And that's what we're doing, right? We're connecting that visibility, making it a fluid transition from the open road into the actual yard, and all the steps along the way while that trailer is in the yard, to and from the dock door, the slot. This is all just a transition of fluid information and visibility throughout the entire process. That is the key. Now let's take a little more detail. Today, if you didn't have that, for example, a lot of the systems use geofencing for the check-in, check-out arrival time, right? The check-in time. Well, geofencing is good, but it's not perfect, right? So that's one data set. The second data set is the TMS. Their timestamps are always off. They're not quite accurate. But the actual source of truth, if you think about it, is the actual yard system that's checking in the actual trailer. When you connect all these data points together, all the time date stamps are the same. So there's a big benefit right there, right? We are now looking at all the same data. So if we're doing data integrity, if we're comparing system to system, if transportation or accounting is looking at this information, it's all the same. That's one of the real big benefits for sure.
Kaleris and Project 44 has established a really strong partnership. Can you share how this works and what are the benefits for shippers?
Well, the example I just gave was one of the benefits of the actual date timestamps being the same, so the date is the same, but also is think about the other data that is also carried through the the visibility platform, right? It's information about the trailer, about the load, the purchase order numbers, shipment numbers, trailer information, cab driver. All this information, if we didn't have that partnership, would have to be transferred manually from system to system. So we have that guard again. Okay, what's your trailer number? What is your license plate? What is your cab number? All this can be now done with our partnership, can be done automatically, right? Because we're just passing the data from project44 to Kaleris. And this is a huge benefit because think what happens after the fact. What if the guard enters the wrong information? Well, that's going to cause problems in multiple areas. It can cause problems in the flow of the goods. It could cause problems just purely in the accounting process of the bill letting information being wrong. The back end extra work and labor to correct those errors is a really big deal. Now we're doing some really interesting things, Kristian, as you know. Take that to the point of refrigerated trailers. We're going to have an integration with project44. We're going to pass temperature data back and forth. We're going to save a lot of time for our shippers, right? Our cold storage customers. Now that's all today done manually. We'll start being able to flow that data back and forth automatically. We're taking out the potential errors. We are making things faster and more efficient and making the whole process much smoother with our partnership.
Eric, my last question. How do you wish or how do you see end-to-end supply chain, logistics and transportation evolve in the next few years?
Big question, but there's a vision I think we all share. The pandemic kind of highlighted a lot of these gaps, if you will, right? These constraints, and that really put a lot of not just within the supply chain community, but the whole world saw this how important supply chain really is. So I think the future is going to be a combination of visibility touching more modes and nodes in the supply chain. And also underneath that visibility is the execution solutions. So in essence, that's what we're doing, right? Kristian, project44 is the visibility across the supply chain. Kaleris is an example of the solution execution. And if you combine these two together, we're going to go from what I think is just today more of a visibility mentality of where is my product, where are my raw materials, where are my pallets, where is it, to a supply chain that's more about planning. And planning, because think about our analytics. When we get all the connections made and it's all very fluid with predictive analytics, machine learning, these kind of things, we're going to have the ability to truly plan everything along the entire supply chain, where the shipper or the factory knows where the raw material is, the shipper knows where their incoming goods are. There's no reason why they can't available to promise should be anywhere in the supply chain. They should have the inventory anywhere it is in the flow of the supply chain, not just what's sitting in that warehouse today. Now, a few forward companies are trying to do this. They're trying to sell what's on the truck coming in. You can't do that without visibility. You know that, right? And you have to know all the steps along the way. You have to have the execution to make it smooth, visibility to see what's going on. Put all this together, we're going to have a fantastic supply chain that has the planning. We have just the fluidity across here and the ability to then adjust, right? When these things happen, the pandemic or ports that get shut down or canals that get blocked, these kind of things are going to happen. But with the right planning, because I see this as the future, we can now adjust for that much, much, much better. That's what I really see, Kristian.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you for joining Supply Chain Talks today, but also thank you for the partnership. So with that, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Kristian. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.